Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you're at. This is Open Door Adventist Fellowship live stream that's going on right now. I'm so glad that you guys can join us. We have a really awesome program for you guys. Right after this welcome, we're going to be singing a couple of songs together. And afterwards, we actually have a new series. I actually got this inspiration of this new series from our prayer meeting on Tuesday. I just felt like our church members were such an inspiration of how they were growing and how much blessing they were getting out of even this bad situation that they were putting in. So our new series is actually going to be called "Don't Waste COVID-19: How to Growing Instead of Shrinking." And so I'm really excited about our series. So I hope that you guys are looking forward to it too. Um, Thank you, Jeremy, and especially Jeremy for leading out the praise team. Hey, let's sing some songs together.
Sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name.
Let's sing that again. My
hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all. When darkness seems to hide His face, I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil.
My
anchor holds within the veil. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all.
When
He shall come with trumpet sound, oh may I then in Him be found, dressed in His righteousness alone, flawless and before the throne. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all.
love breaks my fall. Scandal of grace, you died in my place, so my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you, forever the hope in my heart. Death, death, where is your sting? Your power is as dead as my sin. The cross has taught me to live. Your mercy my heart now to see. The day and its trouble shall come. I know that your strength is enough. Scandal of grace, died in my place. My soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you, forever the hope in my heart. It's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of your love that my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you, forever the hope in my heart. Sing that again. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you, forever the hope in my heart. I'd like to invite everyone to sing our prayer song together. So open our eyes. Open our eyes, Lord. We want to see Jesus, to reach out and touch Him and say that we love Him. Open our ears, Lord, and help us to listen. Open our eyes, Lord. We want to see Jesus. Amen.
Hey guys, welcome back. Praise team, that was awesome. Especially David, right? I mean, he's so excited about praise and worshiping God. It's awesome. He's been at our house, living with us for the last 3 weeks, and man, he has like so much energy and so much joy, and it's so contagious. And we're so glad that he's actually kind of like the face of praise team nowadays. I know you guys really enjoy watching that. Before we actually get into our sermon, one thing I wanted to do was actually pray for all the people, especially our church member. I realize that are in the health professional and that are directly, or even if they're not, they're being personally affected by this coronavirus. For me personally, if you guys are asking me how I've been affected, I haven't really been affected at all. I mean, I always worked from home, and so I'm kind of used to being at home. Of course, I do go out for Bible studies and all, but still, for me at least, personally, it hadn't really hit me. But I realized through our prayer meeting and through different people that I talked to, I realized, man, it's getting really, really, really personal for a lot of us, and a lot of us are being affected by it. And so I just wanted to take this time to thank all of our church members who are in the health field, to really show our appreciation, and yet also to recognize that what they're going through is not easy, and to actually pray for them. So I actually wanted to take just a minute to actually have all of us. I know we are praying for them constantly, but specifically today, I wanted to actually have time to pray for them right now. And so let's just take a minute to pray for them, and afterwards I'll end with a prayer as well. Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you, and we acknowledge that you are our Father and you are our God. God, we don't understand why things like these happen, but we are deeply affected by this virus, and it has put many people's life on hold. It has really, really affected people. It has, and there's a lot of your daughters and your sons actually dying and suffering because of this. But God, instead of going further away from you, we want to come closer to you through this, because it is only with you that we can even make sense of these things. God, I pray specifically for our church members who have been affected by this, whether it's their business being shut down, whether they have to interact with people who do have this virus, or whether even if they're just at home, they feel isolated from their friends. God, you see all of us, and you don't want us to go through these things. So God, I pray that you continue to let them know that you are with every single one of them, and that you are walking with them in this time, and that they are not alone. God, continue to let us realize that you are with us. And through our series, Don't Waste COVID-19, God, I pray that you would help us to learn to shine through this darkness. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we have a new sermon series. It's called Don't Waste COVID-19. I actually got the idea of this series through a book called Don't Waste Your Suffering. So the idea of the book was, hey, of course, we don't want suffering. Of course, we don't want COVID-19. Of course, we don't want cancer. We don't want, obviously, we're not being masochists here. We're not saying pain is a good thing. And yet, the author was trying to get at, hey, there are good things. There are things that we can grow from through suffering. So there's a phrase, if you guys know, no pain, no gain, right? And that's very, very true. There are certain things that we can learn through our suffering. There are certain things that we can actually grow. But we do have to understand that growth does not happen automatically. So what I'm trying to say is there's people who say you have to go through suffering, okay? Then there's going to be growth, right? So suffering itself is necessary. Or as anybody goes through the fire, then there's going to be growth. But that's actually not true, right? If we continue to use that fire illustration, we see that yes, absolutely, fire can purify gold. It can enhance gold. It can enhance metals. But yet, if you just leave it there, if you don't actually take proper care of the metal, it's just going to burn. And that's the same in our life. Okay? All of us are being affected to one degree or another by COVID-19. But just because we're affected by it, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden that we're going to grow. That all of a sudden that good fruits are going to come out of that. No. Because there is such thing called gain or pain, but no gain. We don't want that. We actually want to say, hey, we don't want to obviously be in this situation. We don't want COVID-19 to continue to go on. We don't like this whole shelter-in thing. Absolutely. And yet, there's things that we can learn. There's good things. We can actually grow through COVID-19. And so we decided to go with our sermon series named Don't Waste COVID-19, because you can grow instead of shrink. You can mature instead of being paralyzed or stunting your growth. And so we're going to be talking about that. I was actually, a perfect example of this is I was looking over at the news this week, and there's many different people, actually, especially celebrities, actually giving back a lot of their salaries and money to for people who are working in the arenas, because a lot of them are working, a lot of them don't have stable income. A lot of them are not getting paid a lot, and because of that, because there's no games going on, a lot of them are in really difficult financial situation. But these athletes are actually giving their check so that they can actually support people. So again, we see how people through difficult times, through painful times, where it actually brings out more generosity and brings out more love. And that's awesome. But I also saw another news article where actually this man, he got let go of his job, and like his girlfriend was actually saying he was getting more and more and more anxious day by day, looking at the news and saying like, I can't handle this anymore, I can't handle this anymore. And so one day he actually came out of his room with a gun and actually shot her. Luckily, she survived, but he killed himself after that. So again, just because you go through suffering, just because you go through difficult times, that does not mean that you automatically grow. It's really up to the person. You have a choice. I have a choice. We all have a choice. Are we going to grow through this time? Or are we just going to say, no, this is horrible, it's going to devastate me more, I'm just going to hide and just wait until all of these things just ends? No, we want to be able to say, no, we're going to definitely grow through this. So this is what our series is all about. How do we grow through difficulties? How do we grow through suffering? How do we grow through COVID-19? How do we grow when we're stuck in our houses all day? Today, specifically, we're going to talk about why a lot of times, many of us, we don't deal with suffering well. We actually, to be honest, haven't dealt with COVID-19 the best. So we're going to see how we are operating in a society where it doesn't provide us with the resources. We're also going to talk about some of the negative ideas, the bad theologies, the bad thoughts about God, bad expectations, or unbiblical expectations that we do have when it comes to pain and suffering, and how we need to flush all of that away, right? I mean, if you want to learn, like for example, a lot of people have learned guitar from me, but they come with some bad habits. And the first things I have to do is help them to unlearn the bad habits first so that they can learn guitar really, really well. And same thing for us. A lot of us, we have this pattern. We have negative habits. We have negative thought patterns that we need to flush away first. And then we can put in the good stuff. So today we're going to be flushing out a lot of the bad stuff and to see what the Bible really has to tell us and how we can actually grow instead of shrink in this time. If you talk to a lot of sociologists, they're going to agree with Max Scheller when he says this. He said, every society has a way of dealing with suffering. Western culture is one of the weakest. Okay, what is he saying? He's saying every culture, every single culture, even religion, even atheists, doesn't matter who you are, every person basically has a way they deal with pain and suffering. All of us do. We all have a protocol. But he says, if you look at it within the different cultures that we have, us as Westerners, us as Americans, we have the weakest system. Okay, what does he mean by that? Well, there's one more person. The second person that we're going to be going into, his name is Paul Brand. He actually worked with people with immense amount of pain, right? People with leprosy. And so he actually said this. In the United States, I encountered a society that seeks to avoid pain at all cost. Patients lived at a greater comfort level than any I had previously treated, but they seemed far less equipped to handle suffering and far more traumatized by it. Okay? So Paul Brand, Max Scheller, they're basically saying the same thing. Us as Americans, we are not bad at handling suffering and pain because we are poorer. Okay? It's because we're actually, it doesn't say that at all. It actually says we are more comfortable. We have more amenities. We have more tools. We have more riches. And yet, something about our society, it does not prepare us to deal with pain and suffering. Now, there's many different, it's probably a multifaceted reason why this is the case, but I'll make one argument. And this is what a lot of them are actually saying as well. What a lot of them say is that our Western culture doesn't provide us with any tools. It's because we live in a secular culture. Now, in a secular culture, what they say is there is no afterlife. Okay, there is no God. There is no morality, right? So basically, you have just one life. Okay, young people, you guys know the phrase YOLO. That means you only live once. So the idea is, hey, there is no afterlife. Once you live this life, that's it. So what you got to do is you got to live the best life right now. Okay, so your goal in life is to be comfortable right now. Your goal in life is to prosper right now, be happy right here and right now, because there is nothing after. Okay? But because of that, because our mind is only on my happiness, my pursuit, when suffering actually comes, it becomes an interruption to our life. There is no meaning for suffering. There is no growth in suffering. Why? How can suffering make me have more pleasure? No, suffering is an interruption to my pleasure, my comfort, my desires. So when suffering comes to us, when COVID-19 happened to us, when shelter-in comes to us, we are devastated because, again, it makes us uncomfortable. It doesn't give us joy. We want to go outside and go have parties and holidays and just enjoy ourselves, indulge ourselves, but it's preventing us from doing that. It just becomes a great interruption. It becomes this meaningless things. But if you look at a lot of the other cultures, right? For example, if we take ideas from different religions, like for example, let's say you're a Hindu and you're in India, you believe that suffering comes because you did something bad in the past. It's karma. Well, it's not a good thing. You don't want, obviously, suffering, but at least you have a purpose to it. There's a reason for your suffering, and there's something you can do about it now. Or take the Buddhists for another example. They say the reason why you suffer is because you have attachments. Okay, so what do? You have all of these attachments, you have things that you have desires. Just let go of all of these. You see, at least you have some kind of meaning. There's some kind of reason why you suffer. And there's actually hope. There's actually something else that can come out of your suffering. There's something you can learn from it. There's value to suffering. But for us, for the secular culture, there's absolutely nothing to it. It's just a speed bump. It's just a barrier. Okay, we got to destroy, we got to get rid of suffering as much as we can. There's no value to this at all. If anything, this is what, not all atheists, but this is what one atheist actually says about this question of suffering, this question of like wanting to even get something from suffering, wanting to ask, like try to put meaning to like COVID-19 or these kind, like just even me, he would be like, what are you doing? Like you're trying to grow from, no, forget all of this, forget it, right? He would actually say this is what he says in his book. This is what Richard Dawkins says. In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. And you won't find any rhythm or reason in it, nor any justice. This universe that we observe has precisely the properties that we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. Okay, what is he saying? He's saying we're living in a world where everything is random. There is no God. There is no supernatural. So of course, okay, in this random universe, some random people are going to die. Some random people are going to get cancer. Some random people are going to go through suffering. It's just random. There's no meaning. There's no purpose to it. Okay? The world doesn't care about you. It's totally indifferent. It's not because you did anything wrong. It's not because you did anything good. No, there's nothing to it at all. He continues on. He says this, the question of why is a universal delusion. Why cancer? Why earthquake? Why coronavirus? Useless questions. We ask because we cannot admit the things might be neither good nor evil, neither cruel nor kind, but simply callous, indifferent to all suffering, lacking purpose. So again, what is Richard Dawkins saying? He's saying, listen, you guys are wasting time here. There is no purpose. There is nothing you can learn from this. Okay? There's nothing to it. Okay? But again, just let's say what he's saying is true. Okay? Try to apply that to your life and live day to day. Okay? COVID-19 has zero purpose to it, has zero meaning to it. It's just, oh, you got COVID-19? Sorry, bad luck, bad genes, your parents' fault. Like, imagine living with this kind of philosophy, that there is no hope, there is no joy, there is no happiness that can come out of this. It's just, sorry, bad luck for you, but don't ask any questions. You see, that kind of mindset, again, is the exact reason why Max Scheller and Paul Brand is saying so many people in America have such a difficult time growing, thriving in suffering and pain, because they just see this thing as a negative thing. We just have to get rid of it as far as possible. And again, that's actually making us weaker and weaker and weaker, right? Because again, you might say, well, what's so bad about avoiding it? Well, the thing is, you never actually solve the issue, right? We talked about this a couple of sermons ago, but again, if you just hide your problems, your suffering that comes your way, again, just because you hide from it or avoid it or put it on the ground somewhere, that doesn't mean that it gets any better, right? And a lot of you guys are in health professional, or when you get injured, again, we don't like to go to the dentist. We don't like going to doctors. Why? Because for us, we just want to get rid of the pain that we have. But they actually want a good doctor or a good dentist. What they do is they actually get to the root of the problem. Okay? And that's painful. It's not as easy as just the pill. But again, many of us, when it comes to suffering and pain, we just go, oh, we don't want this at all. Just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. Okay? We just want a pill so that we could just be at ease. We could just be comfortable. But again, this is what actually shrink us. This is what actually makes us more indifferent. This is what makes us more paralyzed. This is what actually gives us more anxiety. And this is what makes us why some of us, we can't sleep at night. Again, it's because we are just avoiding the situation, because again, our society hasn't given us the tools. If anything, it has done us this service. It has given us no hope whatsoever. And we're just all left alone without any purpose or meaning. Now, another thing that a lot of people do during this time is they actually pull away from God, right? They go, oh man, God is a horrible God. He allows all this pain and suffering to happen. Why do I, why even search for God? God is a horrible God. But again, they don't realize that if you go away from God, then your view you're left with is Richard Dawkins' world. Okay, again, that doesn't work for us. That devastates us even more. So what the Bible actually tells us is, yeah, this is not a good world. There's suffering in this world, but there's ways we can actually grow. So for us, even though there is a tendency for us to blame God, yell at God, be angry at God, that's actually better than just pulling away from God. For us, in time of suffering and pain, we actually need to get closer to God. So let's go into it right away. We're going to be using 2 Corinthians chapter 4 today, and this is what Paul says. Paul says, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Just stay here for a little bit. What is it saying? It's saying this is something we have to really, really remember, because a lot of Christians actually think that once I become a Christian, things are going to get better. Okay, the reason why I became a Christian is because I was having a miserable life, and Christianity offered me this happiness stuff. So, hey, once I become a Christian, I'm going to have no suffering and no pain anymore. But is that what Paul's saying? No, Paul's not saying that at all. Paul's actually saying we are still hard pressed, right? There's still stresses in our life. There's still anxiety in our life, but it doesn't crush us. We are perplexed. That means what? That we have difficulty understanding some things. Why is this happening in this world? But that doesn't lead us into hopelessness, despair. We're persecuted. There's people attacking us because, oh, you're a Christian. Why would you believe that naive things? There's people saying these things, and yet we realize that we're not alone. You see, we're struck down. We realize that we talked about a couple weeks ago how all of us, whether we like it or not, we're dying. We're slowly but surely dying. And yet, we are not totally destroyed. So there is hope for us. I think this is so important for us as Christians to understand. Because again, if we come in with this kind of bad theology, if we create our own God and say, oh God, you promise all these things, you're going to be angry at your own God that you have created. Okay? Jesus has never promised an easy life for us. Okay? He never said things are going to actually get easier. He actually says things are going to actually get harder for you. And yet, I'm going to give you the tools for you to survive and to walk and to grow from these things. This is what Jesus actually says in John 15. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. Remember what I told you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecute me, they will persecute you also. So again, what is Jesus saying? Jesus is saying, hey, I'm living a life of persecution. I'm living a life of suffering. What makes you think that all of a sudden that your life is going to be okay? If you are following me who is suffering, that means that it doesn't mean that all of a sudden in your life suffering is going to be eliminated. That's just not realistic. That's not what God promised at all. We have to understand that. Now, why is that important for us to understand? Because a lot of us, we go into life thinking, as long as I have my God card, no suffering is going to come away. And then we get blindsided. Right? But again, if we understand, oh, car is actually coming towards us. Yeah, again, we don't want to be in a car crash. But again, it's much better to be in a car crash where you know a car is coming towards you than when you are totally blindsided. And that's the first thing that we need to recognize is that, hey, we live in this sinful world. And again, Jesus never promises us that life is going to get easy. If anything, life might get even harder for us. So that's the first thing that we have to understand. But we're not just left with like a negative, like, oh, we're just, suffering, suffering, suffering. No, but there is actually hope. The second bad concept that we do need to talk about is this idea of, I know a lot of Christians and a lot of my friends who say these kind of things. They say, you know what? I'm going through the suffering right now because God is trying to punish me. Like I know that I made that mistake, or I haven't been praying hard enough. I haven't really been connecting with God, and so now God is kind of punishing me. It's kind of this like pagan religion, kind of like, like the gods are angry at us, and now we have to like appease him by, like offering sacrifices to God. Kind of like, I know people like that. I know people who don't come to church, but like when bad things happen in their life, they give me like a fat check of like money, and they say, hey, I actually haven't been paying tithe. And it's like, they don't say that to me, like, but they're thinking in their mind probably like, oh, now this bad thing in my life, it's gonna get better, right? It's this concept of like, I'm going through these negative things, and I'm going through suffering because of like God is punishing me. Again, there is some truth to that, and yet there's something different for us as Christians. This is what actually Paul refers to in the next verses. He says this, for we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. So then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you, because we know that the one who raised the Lord Jesus from the dead will also rise us with Jesus and present us with you to himself. So the phrase that I want you guys to look at really is, it says, death is at work in us, but at the same time, death is at work in you. Okay, so what does that phrase basically mean? Well, it's talking about the gospel, right? The whole concept is, yes, there is some truth to this idea that we suffer and we are in this world with coronavirus because of our fault, because of our sins, right? There's truth to that. I mean, a lot of the suffering is, sometimes, of course, there's times where we don't understand it and it's not really our fault, but a lot of the suffering and a lot of the pain that we go through, it's, again, it might be either direct but indirect. A lot of it goes on us. So there is some truth to, yes, this is a punishment from God. But yet, at the same time, okay, because of what Jesus has done for us, okay, you see, what Paul is talking about is he's directing us to the gospel. He's saying, hey, remember Jesus. Jesus actually came and died for us. So there is this idea that, yes, because of our sins, there is punishment. And yet, Jesus is the one who takes our punishment from us. And he's the one who receives our punishment. So you see, Jesus is the only person that actually voluntarily takes on punishment. He voluntarily jumps into suffering. Why? So that he can rescue us from suffering. Recently I was watching a new Jesus film. It's called The Chosen, I believe. If you have time to watch it, please watch it. I only watch like segments of it. I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I'm looking forward to watching it probably tonight. But there's a scene where a leper comes, someone with like skin disease comes and says, Jesus, Jesus, please heal me, have mercy on me, right? If you are willing, you can heal me. And Jesus comes up to him with like, oh man, it's like tearjerker moment, but Jesus comes up to him and says, I am willing. But you see, what I thought about at that moment is I realized, before I just thought, God can easily just snap his finger and make everything okay. But I realized that's actually not why Jesus is here on earth. That's not the reason why he came on earth. He actually came to say, I am willing to heal you, leopard. I am willing to heal you, sinner. Okay? Because I am actually taking your sin from you. Jesus is saying, I am willing, because he's saying the sin that you have, the leprosy that you have, the cancer that you have, the coronavirus, the virus that you have, I'm not just disappearing, I'm not just, everything's all gone. No, I'm actually taking that from you. As I am healing you, I am bringing on the disease myself. I am dying for you. And you see, this is what Jesus is saying. On one hand, you are correct that suffering, pain, death is part of our sin. And yet he's telling us, because he came and took on our suffering, our pain, our punishment, now we don't need to look at our pain and suffering solely as punishment alone from God. No, Jesus is the one who takes all of that. So there is this balanced view, and this is exactly why Paul is saying here, death is at work in us, right? We still see how there is still suffering and pain and death that awaits us, and yet there is life at work because of Jesus. There is life forming within us. There is still, death is not the end of it. It's just a prologue, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that there's a great banquet awaits us. So once again, these are the two things that we need to remember. These are the two bad ideas that we have in our mind that we need to flush away. These are the bad habits, the bad thought habits, the unbiblical thoughts that we need to flush out. And the first thing is, again, this idea like, la 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 la, like once I have Jesus, everything's going to be fine. No. Jesus says, expect suffering. But I'm going to give you a tool for it. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the weeks coming up. And second thing is, again, you are right, that this negative things, the sufferings in our life is because of our fault, and yet Jesus is the one who takes away everything. And so, like, to go back to what Paul talked about, yes, there is persecution, but we're not abandoned. There is pressure, but we're not crushed. There is, we don't understand, but there is no despair for us. We are struck down, but we are not totally destroyed at all. You see, Paul actually ends this chapter by pointing us to a very, very great hope. And this is really, these whole verses, our whole sermon series is based on this idea. If you go to the next verses, it actually says this. Paul says, therefore, do not lose heart. You see, for us, we don't have to lose heart. There is hope for us, right? It's not Richard Dawkins' world where we say everything's hopeless. No, do not lose heart. And this is the beautiful part right here. This is really exciting. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. I mean, that's so beautiful. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly what Don't Waste COVID-19 is all about. You see, outwardly, we are suffering. This does not mean all of a sudden everything's going to be fine now. But yet, inwardly, we are continuing to be renewed day by day. There's goodness that can still come out from this horrible situation that we have been placed in. So he continues on by saying this. He says, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Again, Paul leaves us with great, great hope. Even in midst of suffering, that we're not going to be defined by our suffering, but we're going to be defined through our suffering. That we're not going to lay down because of our suffering, but we're going to stand up and we're going to learn to grow through our suffering. That we're going to be renewed. And this is beautiful hope for me, and that's beautiful hope for all of you guys. Because again, it's really easy just to look at the news and look at COVID-19 and just say, man, like this is horrible and nothing good's going to come out of it. But to actually realize, no, God can make beautiful things. And to summarize all of this, it says in Romans 8, and some of you guys know this verse very well, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And this is exactly what God promises us. He says, okay, bring all your burdens, bring all your anxiety, bring all your brokenness, even though it's your fault. Bring everything to me. I am a God that can make all things work for good. And that's exactly what our series is all about. And we're not going to just lay down. We're not going to just say, okay, we're just going to hide in a cave and just wait until COVID-19 goes away. No. We're going to actually come out stronger. We're actually going to become more mature through this. Let me just tell you a short story and I'll end. A story of one of our church members. He had been going through a lot of difficulties in his life. Moved to a new place, okay? Difficulty trying to, in his relationships, at work, and even in his family. And because of that, he was just, I mean, when I saw him, it was kind of like the perfect storm, right? You know, when they say, when it rains, it pours. I mean, there was just one period in our church member's life where it's just like, it just kept pouring and pouring. I mean, like everything bad that could happen was just happening to him. And I could just see it in his eyes. It's just like, man, this guy, he is not surviving this at all. Like he is literally drowning. I mean, at one point, like he was like losing his mind because he just couldn't, I mean, understandably, because it was just so many things happening to his life that he couldn't sleep at night, right? He wasn't sleeping well and he wasn't even eating because he had no appetite. And he just like came over to my place and he was just like wiped out, right? But it's really, really amazing because as I was talking to him and I was, you know, I kept talking to him about a lot of the things that we just talked about, how, hey, there's hope and you got to hold on to Jesus, right? That things are not going to get easier, but hey, you can stay afloat, right? And it was just really, really amazing as I look at him now, okay? One thing you have to understand is his life, his situation actually didn't get better. Okay, I know like some of you guys have heard testimonies like, oh, I was going through a hard time and I looked at Jesus and all of a sudden everything's fine. No. And I'm not saying that those things don't happen. But what I'm talking about is this church member, his life right now, even right now, it's not that his situation got better. Okay? If anything, his situation actually got worse. But as I saw him really holding on to Jesus, really taking his time to spend time with God, to really cling on to God, I actually saw him, before he was just like drowning, but now I actually saw him starting to stay afloat. Okay? Again, not every day. Some days he was drowning again. And I needed to help him, you know, to see it. But again, he continued to hold on to God. And like seriously, it's so awesome for me. It's like an inspiration to me, for me to see that, because like sometimes I see him interacting with people and I just feel like, man, like did the situation just get better? And I talk to him and that's not the case. again, it actually is worse, but because he's holding on to God, there's like poise, there's equilibrium in him. I sometimes I just feel like he's so present that I feel like even though there's storm, I told him I feel like you're just surfing through the storm and the wind, and it's like he's almost not enjoying the pain, but he's just like surfing right through it, and it's like, you know what? I have God. I have nothing to fear. Isn't that beautiful? Like, don't you guys wish you can do that through this COVID-19 situation, through this shelter-in situation? Aren't you wishing right now you say, you know what? Yeah, this is difficult. This is hard. I feel like there's pressure. Things are not working out financially, but you know what? You know what? I can grow from this. There's things that God can teach me through this. Or do you want to say, no, forget all of this. Like, I hate God. Like, forget this. I'm just going to wait until everything gets better and just become more of a negative person, more fearful person, person with more anxiety. No, none of us want that. Again, this is what God is offering to us. So, question I want to ask you is, what kind of person do you see yourself after this COVID-19? Are you going to be a person who has become stronger, become more patient, better relationships? Or are you going to become a person who became more indifferent, more cynical, more bitter, more fearful, more anxious, more hateful through this experience? The choice is yours. You always have a choice. It's your choice. And God is saying, follow me. As we go into time of reflection, let us follow him and to see that he is the great light that we do need to continue to look at in this dark time.
Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you. It is well, So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The ways and winds still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The ways and winds still know His name. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is through it all, my eyes are on you. It is well with me. Father, we ask of you this day to come and heal our land. Let our hearts together, that your glory may be seen in us. Then the world will know that Jesus Christ is Lord. Let us be one voice that glorifies your name. Let us be one voice declaring that you reign. Let us be one voice in love and harmony. And we pray, oh God, grant us unity. Now's the time. Now is the time for you and I to join our hearts in praise. That the name of Jesus will be lifted high above the earth. And the world will know that Jesus Christ is Lord. Let us be one voice that glorifies your name. Let us be one voice declaring that you reign. Let us be one voice in love and harmony. And we pray, oh God, grant us unity. Sing one more time. Let us be one voice that glorifies your name. Let us be one voice declaring that you reign. Let us be one voice in love and harmony. And we pray, oh God, grant us unity.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us, for your time, especially the praise team for leading us out, even though they had to do a lot of things differently and record separately and all of these different things that we had to do. I know it was really complicated for them, and so, but thank you so much for the praise team, specifically Jeremy, for setting all of that up. and for Will and Nicole for producing everything as well. Um, we have a couple of things that you guys need to look out for, because right after this, we're actually going to start a new thing called Family Spotlight, where I am going to start interviewing different open door families. And so I'm going to be coming and asking you some questions as well. But our first victims are Eugene and Eunice, and they're going to be talking to us about a couple of lot of funny and interesting things, especially of how um, Eugene traveled far and wide just to find Eunice and to marry her. I know that you guys are looking forward to that story, so it's going to happen right after this video ends, and we're gonna have just like a kind of couple of announcement slides that's gonna run through, and after that, there's gonna be that interview. So you don't want to miss out. What maybe as you are preparing food or even eating food, you guys can watch that together. And after the interview, we will also have bloopers of all the different mistakes and all the crazy weirdness that we had while we were filming all of this. I hope that all of you guys have a wonderful, wonderful Sabbath. Once again, I wish I could just come out of the camera and go and hug all of you guys. But online kisses to all of you. Have a wonderful day. Okay, you guys are ready?
Sure.
Okay, say hi to church members.
Hi.
Okay, why don't you guys start by introducing yourself and your kids and your pets?
I'm Eugene, and this is Sadie.
I'm Eunice, and this is Lola. And we have two 8-year-olds named Ethan and Emma.
Okay. Where do you guys live, and what do you guys do for a living?
We are physical therapists, both of us, and we live in Roseville.
What is your favorite snack?
I'm not a sweet person, so savory, like maybe like tok type of snack is my favorite.
Okay, some kind of duck.
Yeah, like something savory or not sweet.
Do you have a favorite duck?
Karetok.
So for your birthday, would you rather have a duck cake rather than a like an actual cake?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Good to know. All right, Eugene?
Probably popcorn.
Popcorn. Do you have like a special flavor of popcorn that you like?
Just butter and salt is good.
Butter, salt?
Hmm.
Do you have a favorite brand?
Not particularly, but I do like Orville Redenbacher's popcorn.
Next question. How did you guys end up at our church?
Well, I moved up here first, and Eunice asked me to go check out the Korean church. So I came to the Korean church, and it was not like the typical Korean church. That yeah, there was very, very few people there, but they were overly friendly, way more than you would typically see from a regular Korean church. And I was thinking, what's wrong with you guys? Why are you so friendly? But they were very friendly and they were very welcoming. And they asked me, hey, do you want to go to a golf expo at Haggin Oaks? I knew nothing about it, but I went with them and just started making friends, and that's how I started.
Okay. How about for you, Eunice?
Eugene was interviewing up here while I was back in SoCal, and he told me that he found a Korean church and then met some people that knew me, which is unusual. So I asked who they were, and they were Jason and Mary, and I grew up with Jason at the same home church in the Bay. So yeah, we just had a lot of contacts at this church before we even moved up here, and then we were church hopping for about 6 months before we picked the Korean church for our family.
What is your favorite thing about our church?
I like that it's not too small and not too big. I feel like we all know each other, and I really like that about our church. We don't just get lost in the big mass of things. It's not a cliquish church where like there's certain groups, only hang out with certain groups. It's small enough that everybody knows everybody, but it's big enough that there's a lot of help if we needed to help to do stuff. Yeah, I think everybody's very open and willing to help out and stuff like that. So I really like that about our church.
Yeah. Eugene?
For me, it was pretty much that we're very, very friendly. It's not the typical Korean church. As you said, it's very cliquish and outsiders can't come in. We're very welcoming to outsiders. So
Nice. Okay. Let's do a quarantine update. For you guys, how has the whole shelter in, how has that affected you personally?
it's affected my work. We're doing 90% telehealth from the clinic. One really nice thing is that in the morning, there's no traffic. It only takes 9 minutes to get to work. It's really nice. Coming home, there's no traffic either. And I'm getting off at reasonable hours now because telehealth is really quick.
We have the kids home from school, but we are both working similar hours. If not, Eugene's working the same hours and I'm working similar hours as before. So it's a little bit more chaotic at home. Trying to be a teacher and still work and everyday mom stuff. It's hard to balance right now. And the kids are getting cabin fever, not being able to go out when it's such a nice day outside and go run errands and go to the park and go visit places when they're home. And it feels like summer vacation, but we can't go anywhere. So that's been hard.
Okay, next question. This is a totally random question. What's something new that others don't know about you? Or what's something that you think our church members don't know about you? A fact.
Eugene picked me up at a church.
Okay. Okay, why don't we go into that story?
A lot of people already know the story.
But there's gonna be people who don't know, so why don't you give us like a nutshell, like a short version of it?
Well, I was going to Upper Room Church, and I kept hearing through the years, through the grapevine, that Mountain View Church had a lot of eligible bachelorettes, and there weren't enough bachelors up there.
Okay.
And Oh, it was such a long drive to go from LA to San Jose. So I was like, wow, I don't want to drive that far. But uh, I talked to my friend. I said, hey, let's just go up there and check it out. And sure enough, a lot of girls, not very many guys.
Oh, at that age.
Yeah. And
but I'm thinking, let's say some of our YAM members were to go visit another church. So
Hmm?
Eugene, how do you pick up a girl without creeping them out?
um,
You get a good friend to introduce you,
Ah,
because I did not see this coming at all, because a very good friend of mine had introduced him to me, because we were in the same profession. So it was a very like easy way to connect about something. So that was a like an icebreaker right off the bat. And then what happened? Oh, there was a group gathering where it's very no pressure.
okay.
Um, and then at the end of the time spent together, if you felt like there was a good blend of character personalities, then that's when you ask for their number, or like a second way, an opportunity for another meeting, I guess. He asked me for my number at church.
And you were not creeped out by at all by them.
No, because we were talking about no, I was about to take my boards for my licensure for physical therapy. So we were talking about, I was worried about starting my career, and he was already a PT. So we were talking about that kind of stuff. And then I needed internships or first job opportunities, and he was already working. So he had an office. So it was kind of a very non-creepy way of asking for my number.
Mm,
And so I didn't even see it coming.
got it. So after that, how long did it take you guys to actually get married after that?
A little over 2 years, two and a
Wow.
half years.
How long were you guys doing long distance? Were you guys long distance the whole time?
No, we were long distance for about
Mm,
10 months,
Mhm.
about 10 months, shy of 10 months. And then I moved to Southern California. And then we dated for another 5 months, 6 months before we got engaged. And then we were engaged for just shy of a year.
got it.
Oh, I think so, huh?
Something like
And now
Mhm.
you guys have been married for how long?
13 years. It took a while.
Wow, 13 years.
Time flies.
I hope you're having fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next random question before we finish. If you had to go on a podcast and talk for an hour, what topic would you choose?
1 hour about the same topic?
Yeah. Or okay, if hour's too long, 30 minutes.
Probably photography.
Photography?
Hmm.
Okay. And Eugene, why don't you show the, oh, I guess you can't show them, but those pictures that you have in the background over there, those are actually pictures that you took, right?
Hmm.
I would probably talk about babies.
Babies. Okay, why babies?
Um, I worked with babies for a long time, and it's kind of my passion. So I worked with infants, doing physical therapy for infants, and I really, yeah, it's like my joy in life. I really enjoyed it. So since I probably know about that more than anything else in my life, probably would talk about that. It'd be easiest for me to talk about that.
Yeah. All right. Let's go down to, let's wrap it up. How has the shelter in place or the quarantine help you to understand God better or to be more grateful?
initially when I heard the news come in from Asia that this was happening over there and that it would be something that we would have to expect, I just saw all the negatives about this. I was really like concerned about the health of everybody, but also what impact it was going to have on our life and how honestly it was going to jeopardize everything. We had plans to travel, time off. I mean, like everybody else, we had like life planned for the next months.
Mm.
That was going to be completely impacted, losing money and so many all the negatives. And then as the new and as it progressed in China, I was on Facebook and stuff like that, and there were people writing blogs about their experience being quarantined over there. And like after weeks of hearing all the bad, I came across a friend who had linked another friend who was quarantined in China somewhere, in like the worst part of China that was impacted. And she was a Christian, and she had written this blog in her blog to keep her sane, basically during this process. And I read her link for all the silver linings during this period. And she was in the hub of it. She was in the worst affected area. And she was writing all the good things that were happening because all the negative things were just getting to her. And then I read that blog of what she had written about, all the good that's happening. And it completely changed my view of what's happening, that there's always going to be a silver lining in the worst case scenario, and that I should be grateful for those silver linings. She's talking about her kids getting along, that everybody in the family is learning to be more patient with each other. They're trying to get creative. Her cooking's improved, like just everyday stuff that you never think about that she was grateful for. And then just before all of our closure, and that's when I read it, just before all of us got really impacted by this. So really challenged me to see the good that can come out of something this bad. To look at all the good that I am blessed with, that I should really be grateful for, that you never think about until you read a blog or somebody else's point of view. And it kind of gave me hope, and it made me like be ready for it, and with a different point of view, instead of just the negative and the negative and the negative, and trying to see the good in the process. And it hasn't been 100% bad. We are taking things a lot slower. We're more calm about things. We're not running around busy. We're able to take some extra time for things that needed to be taken care of. We're not rushed to put the kids to bed and get back to work, or we're taking our time and trying to catch up with life and each other and our family time more. We're definitely spending more time with our kids, for sure. So there's definitely something good coming out of it. So we need to be grateful for those things, for sure. And your sermon series about not being fearful, it's helped me kind of, extra peace of mind, extra calmness, it's out of my hands, and I do need to leave it to God, kind of a mentality that we need every day, but especially right now. So there's a lot of panic mode, a lot of anxiety, and then you're like, remember, oh, it's not up to me. I'm not in control. I just need to let it go and talk to God and pray about it, and He will make it what it is that He wants it to be for me. That's the mentality I'm getting from this pandemic crisis that's happening. So it's not always calm, but that always comes back to remind me.
Yes. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Eugene, how about for you?
I've never really enjoyed trying to do therapy over the phone. We have something called telephone advice calls, and it's always hard because you can't see touch the person, see their posture, how they move. So it's really hard to actually do therapy over the phone. And I was really anxious about having to do telephone therapy. I thought, what? I've never done video. It's kind of weird for them to see me through a camera. And I felt a little self-conscious doing that. After a while, you just kind of get used to it, and all of us at the clinic were just kind of anxious about having to do this, and how do you document something that you're just doing telehealth on, and even the bosses were anxious, and they're just not very happy. In fact, our director, he didn't curse at me, but he was cursing as he was describing something. I've never seen him curse that much before, and I tell it he's anxious. He's not happy because of this whole thing. And but what I got out of it was, after a while they told us that we may have to do different jobs. Well, being a physical therapist for 23 years, that's all I know. I don't especially in the outpatient setting. And then if you want to put me in the hospital, I'm afraid I might kill somebody because I don't know what lines are what and all that. He says, and well, after all, I thought, everybody's kind of in that same boat. Everybody's anxious. Everybody's on edge. No one's really happy or comfortable. You just gotta roll with punches. Changes are coming. Some of my coworkers are already doing different things than PT, and my time will come. My turn will come, and you just have to roll with the punches. And it's just God will make things just work out. It'll be just fine. If you stress, it doesn't help anything.
Yeah.
If you get angry, it doesn't help anything. So that's what I've gotten out of it.
All right. Do you guys have any prayer requests so that our church members can pray for your family, or anything else that you guys have?
Let's see. I really pray and wish that our church family is not directly affected by this. We have elderly in our church, and we have a lot of medical healthcare workers who are, at the front lines. I really pray that not many healthcare workers are affected or get infected or, get sick from it when they're trying to put their lives on the line and, trying to help people, because we promised an oath that that we all come out of this with a better heart for each other and not be directly affected by all of this.
Eugene, do you have anything to add?
Just for good leadership in our country to just kind of lead us through this.
Okay. Is there anything that you guys want to say to our church members directly?
I miss seeing you guys at church.
I do too. It's the little things that we took for granted, like, having a church building to walk into to say this, hi, this to our faces and all that we missed a lot. And just every day, like watching you preach seems so normal, but now I feel like we took it for granted, not being able to be, not being there, now that I miss all of that. And then, that we can all endure it together and fighting, and and I'm sure we'll see each other soon. But I'm so glad that we have this video conference worship, online worship, even available to us. A lot of churches don't, so I'm just grateful that we even have video conferencing and online church and all of this. So can't wait to see everybody, and hope everybody takes care of each other and the moms don't go crazy with all the kids. And bye, miss you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are at. Let's do that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 4 and 3 and 3 and 4.
A minute ago, it was working.
Okay, I think I see him. Wait for my mark. Target acquired.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you're at. We are Open Door Adventist Fellowship. Even though we're shut door right now, closed door. America-Mexican border closed.